Hilary Ben.
Thank you very much indeed. Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to begin by acknowledging the progress that the government has made, as many other members have already done in this debate. And I think the House would like to thank the Secretary of State and the Minister who's spoken from the dispatch box today, because we really have seen a transformation from the laissez-faire approach that the government took previously to a really hands-on approach now where, and I also pay tribute to the civil servants for the work that they've obviously done in advising ministers, asking themselves the question, what are all of the levers that we can pull and the legislation that we can enact to force people to live up to their responsibility? And I also want to thank all of the members on all sides of the House. It's been a team effort, but I would echo the point made by the honourable member who's just spoken, that with that government majority, dissent, let's be blunt, on the Conservative backbenches has been really important in getting us to this point, and I pay particular tribute to the honourable members for Stevenage and Southampton Itchen. But the reason above all else why we've got to this point is because of the leaseholders. Mm. They have refused to give up. Yep. They've looked at the situation they found themselves in through no fault of their own and basically said, we're not having it because it's not fair. And the House now acknowledges that and recognises it, and we should above all applaud their determination and persistence. All of the cladding groups, including the Leeds cladding scandal group in my constituency, where, like many members who are speaking, I have constituents affected, and it shows what can be done if you don't give up. And there's a really important lesson in life there. Having said that, our constituents have lived with years of uncertainty, and it's not quite over yet. A point I shall come back to at the end of my brief remarks. Reference was made to one of the videos of one of the fires. I mean, we all saw what happened at Grenfell. But looking at the video of the fire at the Cube, the student accommodation in Bolton, and the speed with which that went up, I think the official report said, in effect, the building did not perform according to its expectations. Well, I mean, if that isn't under a statement, I don't know what is. The truth is that we're dealing with a load of buildings that were badly built and were unsafe, and people got away with it for far too long. And if we put ourselves in the position of those who are living in those buildings, never mind the fear of a bill arriving which you have no hope of paying for, the waking watch costs, the insurance, the uncertainty, can't get on with my life, can't sell, going to bed every night thinking, well, if there were a fire, would I get out if it went up in 11 minutes? It is a scandalous position that people have been put in, again, through no fault of their own. And I just want to make these brief points. The first is, I stick to the principle that I and many other members have advocated from the start, that leaseholders, because they're not responsible, shouldn't have to pay anything. And my honourable friend, the member for Greenwich and Woolwich, who spoke so clearly a little earlier, was absolutely right when he said that they shouldn't. A cap is better than an uncapped bill, but why should they have to pay anything at all? Secondly, we have discussed already this afternoon the position of buildings below 11 metres. I think the logical case for including them is extremely strong. Now, the Minister has moved, and he said today in answer to interventions that he's prepared to look at them on a case-by-case basis. But it seems to me you could look at them at a case-by-case basis even if you chose to include them within the scheme. Thirdly, I would like some clarification on what happens, and it was a point raised also by my honourable friend on the front bench, if leaseholders have already paid up to the £10,000 cap, but there are further costs, and the one that has been referred to by many is, what if there's a continuing need for a waking watch? And if the bill isn't paid, then the fire service may say, you're going to have to leave the building because I'm shutting it down because you haven't still got a waking watch in place. What happens in those circumstances? Because it would be scandalous for leaseholders who already paid the 10,000 or the 15 in London to find themselves suffering that for want of someone to pay the bill. Fourthly, and it's not been raised in the debate so far, but I have had some constituents contact me, the government has decided to limit the number of leaseholders who are not resident, buy-to-let landlords, who can benefit from the scheme. Now, morally, I don't see how anyone could argue that they are more responsible for the failings of others than residential leaseholders. That's the first point. The second is, if you have a building where there's quite a lot of buy-to-let properties, and the buy-to-let landlord leaseholders can't come up with their share of the money to fix the building, then that impacts upon the residential leaseholders who also live in the building, and the net result could be that the building doesn't get fixed and they will continue to bear costs that they cannot bear. And the point about cannot bear, and it's ultimately the reason why the government had to move, is it was a fantasy to think that leaseholders were going to come up with sums of money they simply do not have. Ridiculous. It was never ever going to happen. And lastly, the government, in paying tribute to the government, they have created a very complex edifice. It's been described, I think, by the Leasehold Knowledge Partnership as a waterfall. And lots of things have got to happen in the right order for this to work. And I understand why they've done that, because of their determination to try and get after the people who are, in fact, responsible for this scandal. But what it means is that there will continue to be uncertainty for our constituents while they're waiting for all of this to work and to come to pass. And frankly, I will of course give way to the Father of the House.
I'm grateful. The honourable members mentioned the Leasehold Knowledge Partnership. I should have included them in those to be thanked, and I think that they and the National Leaseholders Campaign may have had time to get from the rally to the gallery, so can I repeat the thanks to them and include with them Lord Greenhalgh in the Lords, who's engaged with all the voluntary groups. I can't think of any better charitable aim for a campaigning charity than the achievement so far in saving residential leaseholders from a situation which they couldn't otherwise escape.
I'm delighted to echo what the Father of the House have just said. They've been brilliant in their analysis of what's been done, hasn't been done, what the problems are, what the solution ought to be, and also their persistence. And so my final point to the Minister is, and I know he will appreciate it, because he's worked very hard on this, is that our constituents have waited long enough with their lives on hold, and the sooner we can make all of these bits work to enable them, as I've always said, to wake up that morning they dream of when they can think, do you know what, I don't have to worry about the nightmare I've been living in for the last 5 years, and I can get on with the rest of my life, and we owe it to them to bring that day around as soon as possible.